I hear people say, well, my mechanic took a borescope and looked at my camshaft and he said he didn't see anything wrong with the camshaft lobes. All right. Well, the problem is there's multiple lobes on here, and unless you can inspect all of them, you don't know for sure. Like in this case, we've got two lobes that are completely worn down. The others actually don't look too bad. So if I'm not looking at these two, I'm oblivious to the fact that I have a camshaft issue.
I'm John.
I'm Jeff.
And this is Keep Those Props Turning. Perspectives and insights to keep you flying, not grounded.
Jeff, I wanted to talk a little bit about camshaft and lifters and the differences between Continental Lycoming engines. I see engines all the time or have folks call in saying, my mechanic says my camshaft and lifters are making metal, or they're pitted, or they're corroded, or worn down, or we're suspecting that the metal that we're finding in our oil filter or screen is coming from camshaft and lifters. And a lot of times folks have a misconception or no knowledge about the design within these Continental and Lycoming engines as to what is and where are the camshaft and lifters in these engines. And I thought today I'd kind of bring in a few of these items here to kind of hopefully clear up some misconceptions, but also help owners to be able to ask questions of their mechanics. All Continental and Lycoming engines have a set of lifters and a camshaft. One camshaft, multiple lifters. The lifters are what open and close through mechanical means the valves on the cylinders for firing the engine and porting out the exhaust gases. The camshaft itself has lobes on it, and these lobes activate or move against the lifters that are pressing against them. So as they are coming to a high point, it pushes open the valve, and then once it goes back to a low point, it closes it. Pretty straightforward.
Right.
But the thing that a lot of folks get confused about or even pass on as fact is, oh, Lycoming lifters are worse than Continental. I have other people that say Continental's worse than Lycoming. And the reality is there's slight differences in design and how you can get to those lifters, but in effect, they do the same thing.
Correct.
So from a Lycoming engine standpoint, the lifters are typically what I call like a T. So it's a flat bevel or flat top on it. It's a T. It fits into the case, and it's secured in there. Then as the camshaft pushes against that, when it comes up on a lobe, it pushes that in, and there's a hydraulic tappet inside there. This has oil in it to allow for, if you will, the gap or the...
It's kind of like a shock absorber.
Shock absorber, but also for expansion and contraction, because nothing stays the same size when it's cold, when it's hot.
That's right.
You know, and that has to make up for that difference. So we're not over opening the valve or leaving a valve stuck open during operation. So these typically will be nice and shiny and flat when they're brand new. Over time, you will wind up with ones that still look brand new, but they fail. And part of this has to do with carbon building up in there, improper lubrication. There can be a lot of different things that happen that the push rod itself will wind up fracturing the case around the lifter. We see, and this is the normal wear that we will find on a worn lifter for a Lycoming engine, is where you have pitting, corrosion has formed. Again, whether it's the water or the acids in the engine have started to eat away on the steel that's exposed on that lifter. The top of these lifters is hardened steel and a certain number of thousandths thick. Once that gets broken off, it either rusts and corrodes and flakes off, or there's fine pits that develop, and now riding against the camshaft, we're chewing away on it, you wind up with soft metal. And you get through that, and the bow, the dish that you see there will happen very quickly. Well, it doesn't just happen to the lifter. It will also happen to the camshaft. So again, here's an example of a camshaft that is a normal shape on this side, but over here, we can see where there's one that is worn down. The lobe is basically gone, minimal lobe. So these two items are wearing on each other. There's microscopic amount of oil that separates the two during normal operation. Well, now you make this rough. You're flaking the metal. You got pitting. You got soft metal on soft metal. Something's got to give. So normally it's the lifters. Oftentimes it's one or multiple camshaft lobes, which actually brings an interesting point up, is that I hear people say, well, my mechanic took a borescope and looked at my camshaft, and he said he didn't see anything wrong with the camshaft lobes. All right, well, the problem is there's multiple lobes on here, and unless you can inspect all of them, you don't know for sure. Like in this case, we've got two lobes that are completely worn down. The others actually don't look too bad. Not that I would use them, but they really don't look that bad. They're not super obvious that there's an issue. So if I'm not looking at these two, I'm oblivious to the fact that I have a camshaft issue. Oftentimes when you look at the faces of the lifters, they're up against this surface and the spot may have worn in the middle, and looking at the edges through a borescope, I may not see anything. So it's very important to make sure that when you can, ideal situation, we're looking at the entire set of lobes on the camshaft and the faces of the lifters. The Lycoming lifters, these are the standard, what we call flat-tappets, but they also came out with, several years ago, what they call roller lifters. And the roller lifter does effectively the same thing. You have a camshaft with a lobe, and the lifter is now rolling across the face of the camshaft lobe. A lot of folks think that this is the ideal replacement for a flat tappet. It does help in the engine coming up to speed or power setting faster. It doesn't improve the horsepower or the efficiency of the engine. And these wear as well. These fail. We see where camshafts are worn down, but the lifter still looks good. The roller lifter looks good still. Other cases, I've seen these completely broken apart, chewed up the camshaft, and a lot of times those are in high running engines that are running at constant speed, like in helicopters. It's still a mess. The big difference for folks to know is that you can't switch from a flat tappet to a roller lifter. It's a different case design, how this sits in there, and the camshaft is different. These typically run $600 to $750 a piece versus a traditional flat tappet. It's about $150, $170. Even the diamond encrusted, what they call diamond slurry lifters, they're about $280, $290 presently in 2026 for those. There's really no difference at the end of the day, because if you're not changing your oil, if you're not getting the water and acids out of there, either one can and will be affected. I have folks a lot of times say, well, we never saw metal being made, but when we take their engine apart and we see cam lobes worn down like this, one of the big questions we have is, didn't you notice a difference in your power of your engine, the performance of your engine?
Well, it was running, yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
And they'll go, well, yeah, we kind of noticed that. It seemed like it took us longer to get down to the end of the runway to take off. Well, there's a reason, because your valves are not opening as the engine expects.
That's right. And, you know, it's probably a gradual deterioration, so it's hard to detect until it's really bad. And as a mechanic, that's a hard situation for us to determine. We can look at oil analysis and see there's a certain amount of metallic, substrates in there. Other than that, we can look at the push rod movement from the exterior, because unfortunately these are all interior to the engine, and really the only way to get to that is pull a cylinder and get in there and borescope it. A lot of engines, there's a few engines you can kind of get in there with a borescope, but more so than not, you basically have to take a cylinder off to look at that kind of thing. So all we can go on is, watching the movement of the rockers to see how much movement's
Which
going
means
on.
pulling the valve covers off.
That's right.
And
Still
taking a
some-
look in to see whether you got the proper gap and movement in
That's
those.
right. You still have to disassemble the engine to some degree, but it's a tough thing. We just can't look in there and say, oh, you got a bad lifter or a bad lobe there on the camshaft.
But the oil analysis, looking for metal in the oil filter and the oil that you drain out are all clues that there's metal present.
That's right. Again, you develop, systematically certain components, like you said, an oil analysis. Okay, we're picking up chrome and maybe some moly, nickel, whatever. Okay, and the oil analysis folks tell you that's probably related to the camshaft or crankshaft. So now you start your investigation a little further, and then from there you might take off the rocker covers and see what's going on there, suspecting it's lifters and cam, but you never know for sure until you open that engine up.
All right. Well, I was talking about Lycoming lifters being T-shaped, if you will, like this. I have folks say, well, you don't wind up with that problem with Continental engines. Well, Continental engines have exactly the same idea, meaning you have a lifter and you have a camshaft. Lycoming puts the camshaft at the top of the case. Lifters are up on top, whereas Continental puts the camshaft closer to the crankshaft at the bottom of the engine, but they still have lifters. And their lifters look a little different. It's a little stubbier, a little rounder, if you will. It's more like a barrel. But these also will have hydraulic tappets in there. But they also corrode. They also fail, just like the Lycoming tappets do. The only key advantage is I can take these out by pulling off the pushrod tubes and replace them with new. Doesn't change my camshaft. You can only replace a camshaft by pulling an engine apart.
That's right. But the other thing is you can actually get in there and inspect the lobe on the camshaft too. But like you were saying, if one part's wearing, there's a good chance the other part's wearing just as bad. So it really doesn't save you much, does it? Other than identifying, hey, it's a problem.
Right. Now, I know Continental will oftentimes give guidance and say, look, if your camshaft is not so bad, and again, they have pictures and they have specs that they call for on the cam and its lobes, you can replace at least the Continental lifters with new ones. Doesn't mean that these will last the full TBO on the engine because they will get chewed up by the camshaft. But it can buy you some time. And for infrequent flyers, people that fly maybe 25, 50, 75 hours a year, it's a way of putting off having to do a full overhaul or repair on the engine for a year, 2 years, maybe even 3 years. But it's very important that when you do that, you are checking the oil, you are checking the oil filter, you're doing that sampling and inspection of the results of that chemical analysis to decide, am I starting to make more metal again? Are we to the point now that the camshaft is really starting to get worn down?
It could be more of a putting a Band-Aid on a problem.
Right.
And like you said, it deserves investigation, inspection on a regular basis, because you could put a new tappet in there and it could start wearing immediately. And you could be in
and it will. I mean, if this is worn in any way, shape, or form, it's going to start chewing it up.
Yeah. So you've got that problem. So keep that in mind when you're watching it and inspecting it. So don't think that a new tappet's going to cure it.
Yeah, it's an interim fix to buy you some time.
Good.
But it's not a solution. Right. You can also get to cases where, again, the top of the lifter for Continental is supposed to be perfectly flat. In this case, the camshaft itself was still in pretty good shape, but it started bending and rolling the edges on the face of that lifter. So it happens to both engines. And it doesn't matter whether the camshaft is on the top or the bottom. It doesn't matter whether you have the traditional Lycoming T-shaped lifters or Continental's barrel lifters or even a roller lifter. They're all going to have issues once corrosion starts on them or a certain amount of time. Eventually, everything pounding on itself will start to flake off the metal.
That's right. Wear and corrosion.
Yeah,
Worst
wear and
enemies.
corrosion. Yeah, lack of oil.